Ivan Pavlenko, From Family to Family, Chapter 1, Part 7, Military School and War, read by Natalia Buzova. In the center of Poltava, near the core park, there was motor tractor school. Every Saturday, cadet units went out on the main street of the city for an evening walk, demonstrating impeccable military training. They marched in companies and platoons as in a parade and sang songs that moved our hearts. Dear Belarus, golden Ukraine, we will protect your young happiness with steel bayonets. And when the graduates of the school came out in May 1940 in a beautiful lieutenant's uniform, crown boots, blue breeches, and green tunics, the sidewalks crowded with young men and women, greeted them with applause and covered them with flowers. They walked, measuring out their pace, slender, handsome, like young knights, causing our surprise and admiration. They were real heroes for us in that kind of majestic and disturbing time. At that time, I finally decided to become a military man. First of all, I joined the ranks of the Komsomol, otherwise the cherished school door would not open for me. I also started vigorous physical activity. Every morning, I did intense exercises, ran along the alleys of the Birch Park, and after lessons, I went to the gym and trained on the crossbar, bars, rope. Although I was thin, I was resilient and agile. At the same time, I revised the subjects for taking exams to the military school. I also informed my parents about my intention, but they were against it. They wanted me to graduate from the technical school first and get a profession, and the army, you see, would not run away. Meanwhile, the war was approaching. The mobilization of reservists was in full swing. Recruiters from the military commissariat frequented the technical school, land surveyor school. They registered those wishing to enter military schools. I chose Poltava Motor Tractor School. It trained military technicians for mechanized units of the Red Army, as well as commanders of tractor platoons and companies. In the beginning, before the matriculation, there was a glitch. At first, the school headquarters did not accept my documents, as I was lacking 2.5 months until I was 18 years old. Someone suggested that I contact Balishin, the commissioner of the school. I did it. I told him that I had been preparing for the entrance for the whole year. I could disassemble and assemble a rifle. I had a ready for work and defense badge. He asked about my parents, about my Komsomol assignments at the technical school, called somewhere, and the documents were accepted. An examination in health began. In front of me, 2 guys looking physically healthy were rejected. But one by one, the doctors scrolled me around, writing in the card, able-bodied. I stumbled where I did not expect. A nurse checked my eyesight. She had a booklet of several pages in her hands, and numbers and letters were encrypted on them with colorful circles. I had never seen such a weird thing. I looked and seemed to see the number 5, but it was the letter B. I was wrong several times and did not pass. It turned out that I had color blindness. My eyes did not distinguish well with some colors. This is not a disease, but a natural property of some eyes. For a military man, especially drivers of cars or tanks, this is a nasty flaw. The color-blind person may not always react correctly to road signs, not see animal vehicles in the thick of the forest. I was confused. I ran to the lieutenant, after whom I had carried the documents of the entrance. He took me to the window, through which others who were being checked could be seen, and said, "Look and remember which page it is on." I watched for half an hour and memorized what was encrypted on all the 8 pages. Then the lieutenant took me to the office and said jokingly, "This guy is from a distant village. He sees such a strange thing for the first time. Take your time to check him again." I sat down on a chair. She flipped through the pages and I counted them. My memory was tenacious. She stopped on the fourth page and showed it to me. According to my observations, there had to be the letter C. I looked closely and saw that it was really C. Well, and so on. "All right," she said, "you may go." Being happy, I jumped out of the room, found the lieutenant, and he knew from my eyes that I had passed. "You see," he said, "a soldier must be ready-witted." His name has been forgotten. I remember that he was from Bobruisk. I passed the exam successfully, and on June the 16th, 1941, I got to know that I had been admitted to the school. I was immediately shaved and put to quarantine restrictions for 2 weeks to take the basic military training. I was enrolled as a cadet of the 2nd Platoon of the 13th Company of the 4th Battalion. I immediately rode home to my sister. I also sent a parcel with clothes, but did not get the answer. The parcel was also lost on the roads of war, and it contained a notebook with my poems. But my parents and sister received letters, so they knew that in the first days of the war, I was in school. I had the news of Hitler's treacherous attack on our country as a cadet, albeit still in civilian clothes, undergoing quarantine restrictions. On Sunday, June the 22nd, in the morning, the quarantine chief let me go for personal belongings that were in my student apartment. I came there, collected my poor belongings, and saying goodbye to the boys and the owners, set out on my return journey. I was walking along Zhevneva Street and saw a group of people near the loudspeaker. I came closer. The faces were stern, focused, and from the loudspeaker, ominous words were spread. "Planes bombed Kiev, Zhytomyr, Minsk." I couldn't believe it at the outset. I wanted to shout, "Oh, you bastards." I went on, inciting and inflicting terrible retribution on Hitler and his clique. I think that many of my peers were overtaken by such feelings at that time. We believed that the heroic Red Army would crush any aggressor. After the quarantine time, when we had learned a little to walk in uniforms, pay tribute, and carry out commands, we were dressed in cadet uniforms and housed in the main building. There were headquarters rooms, a club, a library, a dining room, and some other services on the ground floor. On the first, second, and third floors, there were bedrooms. Perfect cleanliness was maintained there. The beds were iron bunk beds, neatly made. There were bedside tables and desks near the windows. The main front door and windows overlooked the park. We were fed 3 times a day, and so well that after the students' starving time, it was a resort. We were served at table by young waitresses who often married graduates. As a rule, different soups were served for breakfast. For the second course, puddings, cheesecakes, pancakes. For the third course, tea, to which 25 grams of butter was added in the morning and evening. At lunchtime, borscht was served first, then something made from meat, cutlets, schnitzel, meatballs, goulash, or a piece of fish with garnish. After that, compote. Bread was on trays off the ration. Dinner was like breakfast. We ate and, as they say, were full to the limit. But they also made us move so much that before lunch and dinner, we wanted to eat again. At school, I put on weight from 60 kilograms to 67 in a year. My height was 173 centimeters. And I strengthened physically a lot. We lived in the main headquarters for 2 weeks, and then we were sent to summer camps for a basic military training. There, first of all, our junior commanders undertook driving civilian laxity out of us and turning us into military men. In the beginning, it was difficult. We lived in tents, studied firearms, military statutes, were engaged in military and physical training, ran, marched, crawled upon our stomachs. So at bedtime, we fell on the mattresses and slept like the dead. The company was commanded by Captain Bykov, a dark-skinned and physically strong brunette, below average height, who was 35 years old. The medal for courage glistened on his chest, and we looked at it without shifting eyes. He had received it for the battles at Kalkingol, where he commanded a tank company and was wounded. Orders and medals were rare in those days, and those who wore them enjoyed authority and respect. As a commander, Captain Bykov was a bit soft, kind, like Lermontov's Maxim Maximovich from the story Bella. However, those soft qualities did not prevent him from punishing me with 5 days in a guardhouse for losing a cartridge with 5 bullets. As they say, you can't throw words away out of a song. I had such a rather severe disciplinary sanction. It happened in tactical classes. We ran, climbed wooded and hilly terrain. I did not notice how and when the shot belt had unfastened and one cartridge with 5 bullets had fallen out. I caught a sight of it when it was time to return home. I immediately reported about it to the platoon commander. He gave me 2 hours to search for it. I searched, ran to the 7th sweat, but of no effect. I was summoned by the company commander, who tongue-lashed me in front of the formation, emphasizing that the ammunition could have been reached by the class enemy. And immediately he ordered 5 days of simple arrest. As there was no guardhouse in the camp, my detention was postponed until I returned to Poltava. But it so happened that we never saw our barracks again. When the front approached the city, we were sent straight from the camp to the echelon and then to the Caucasus, to the city of Pyatigorsk. When I was already there, I forgot about those 5 days. When one day, it seems a month after our move, Captain Bykov lined up the company and commanded Cadet Pavlenko front and center. I came out without understanding what was going on. And he added, "Remove the belt and sprocket." Then I understood. 2 cadets with rifles in their hands took me across the city to the guardhouse. One went in front with a rifle in his right hand, and the other one behind with a rifle pointed at my back with a bayonet. Such was the ritual of escort under arrest, and I walked in the middle, lowering my head as if before the execution. It was good that I was not led through the streets of Poltava, where I had many familiar students. My platoon comrades were convoying me, and an elderly woman stopped and shouted, "Death to the traitor!" Later, Captain Bykov thanked me in front of the formation and gave me a day off in the city for the best company performance in overcoming the 30-kilometer march from the village of Zolska to Pyatigorsk. I was the first to cover the distance, and I was running almost half of it. However, after the bus to which we were taken straight from the march, my legs got so well stewed that I could not put them in my boots and was exempted from classes for a day. And when I had been running, I felt nothing. The lungs breathed like bellows, and it was easy to wear an overcoat and hold a rifle in a hand. The platoon commander was a military technician of the 2nd rank, Lieutenant Mykola Gava, a 26-year-old man of medium height, energetic and demanding. He was with us almost all day, conducting combat and physical training, tactical exercises, hand-to-hand combat, studying with us statutes and various weapons, rifle, revolver, machine gun, mortar, grenades, as well as monitoring our technical training and daily life from their rise till bedtime. He was physically developed and performed well on sports equipment. I was fond of gymnastics then. Horizontal bar and bars, he encouraged my training and let me go to the sports field instead of rest time after lunch. We were given tobacco and cigarettes. I started to indulge myself too. But once he told me, if you want to be a real athlete, do not smoke. And I didn't put a cigarette into my mouth after that. Once he noticed my success in tactical classes and said, you, Pavlenko, had to go to the infantry school. That was not a reproach for possible omissions in the tactics of war. Everything was fine with it. He simply defined my vocation correctly. All the infantry, tactics, combat and physical training, hand-to-hand combat, shooting, I not only turned it out flawlessly, but also liked it extremely. That was my element, which came from my militant childhood. The battalion commander in Poltava was Colonel Kretov, but he was later taken to his front headquarters by Budyonny. In Petigorsk, Lieutenant Colonel Kanivsky became our commander. Above average height, slender, tireless, and ubiquitous, he was a military man from head to toe. Such people are called a war bone. A former Tsarist warrant officer, he had sided with the Red Army and had taken part in the Civil War. Before the war, he had been a senior teacher of tactics at the school. And in September 1941, he was the chief of staff of the combined regiment of the school and then commander of the regiment, which for a month repulsed the Dnieper fascist troops who tried to cut across the river. For those battles, Major Kanivsky was awarded the Order of Lenin and promoted to a higher military rank. In 1943, he asked to be sent to the front. He was the commander of the 10th Brigade. He died in a battle in Hungary near Lake Balaton as a colonel. As a battalion commander, he was a high-class one. In his personal life, he was a strict Spartan. There were legends about his self-discipline. They raised him in our eyes. We were proud of our commander, although it was not easy with him. Instead of morning PT, he introduced a 3-kilometer run. Often, especially in bad weather, he raised us on alert in the middle of the night, arranged marches and transitions with defense and defensive blow. He himself moved with us, ran like a young man, although he was already under 50 years old. He spoke clearly and passionately. I remembered some of his statements. Grade 2 is an extra barrel of soldiers' blood at the front. At 6 o'clock, I command myself, Lieutenant Colonel Kanivsky, alarm. And in 7 minutes, I am already in the unit, and you are still lingering. If a well-groomed cadet passed by him in spit-polished boots with a white collar and at the same time immaculately saluting, he himself stretched out and immediately declared gratitude. And if you happen to have an inadequacy, he would tongue-lash you in such a way that you would remember till kingdom come. He was loved, but also feared of. Junior commanders were cadets from sergeants recruited from the army. The company commander was Mikhail Frolov, a handsome, slender, blonde man with a well-placed commander's voice. Assistant platoon commander was Senior Sergeant Aziz Vasigov, Uzbek, black-haired, below average height. Sergeants Vasil Poyov and Leonid Shevchenko were squad's commanders. Speaking of commanders, I must say that I preferred those who were marked by fair rigor and exacting attitude, bright personal example, determined, strong-willed, with a fiery temperament. I appreciate the mentioned qualities in people of any profession. A disciplined, tight person is first of all a reliable, self-collected one, ready to work, easy to work with, who will not pull the rug out. Our classes in the summer camps near Poltava were coming to an end. We started looking like military cadets. Meanwhile, the flames of war rolled so rapidly to the east that a month after it had begun, Hitler's hordes were already approaching the Dnieper. We wondered then why our army was retreating. Some commanders and commissioners explained that by the fact that the enemy had attacked suddenly and was armed to the teeth. Others by the tactics of enemy's exhaustion, dragging deep into the country in order to completely destroy them. But one way or another, a military storm was approaching. At night, we were increasingly alerted to scour the surrounding forests for spies and saboteurs. Sometimes enemy planes dropped bombs on a nearby airfield and were hit by our anti-craft guns. In the first days of August, we were alerted and in full gear for 2 days waited for the order to be sent to the front. There was a rumor that the Germans had broken through somewhere and they had to be stopped in anyway. The combined regiment of the school was formed, which immediately went to the Dnieper border and took up defense south of Kremenchuk. Colonel Cherenkov, the deputy head of the school, was appointed regiment commander. The regiment included 500 cadets of final courses. They were mostly appointed as junior commanders and in separate units, commandant's platoon, chemical platoon. The rest of the regiment, 1,500 soldiers, had just been mobilized from the reserve of communists and Komsomol members. The regiment was called the Combined Communist Regiment of Poltava Motor Tractor School. At the end of August, when the Germans broke the front near Kremenchuk, we, the cadets of the new set, were picked up in the middle of the night and forcibly marched to the area of the South Station. There, we boarded the echelons and hurriedly left in the southeast direction. And behind us, the bombs set Poltava on fire. Nobody knew where we were going. We were leaving our parents' land. What would the enemy invasion bring? And what waited for us ahead? Next, we will talk about the Pyatigorsk period of my stay at school. It was described in detail by me in separate memoirs entitled Defending the Pearl of the Caucasus. With some truncation, I include them in these autobiographical memoirs. The memoirs were written in Russian for the Veterans Council of our school in 1984.